Lesson 9, American Government, the Judicial Branch. This lesson explains the structure and function of the third branch of American government, the Judicial Branch. The lesson is divided into two sections. The Judicial Branch, Section 1. We will now begin the first section of Lesson 9. The U.S. Constitution sets up the government, defines the government, and protects basic rights of Americans. In this way, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land. As the supreme law in the United States, the U.S. Constitution is above any state or federal law. The U.S. Constitution sets up a government with three branches: a legislative, an executive, and a judicial. The legislative branch is often referred to as Congress. Unlike the Congress created by the Articles of Confederation, today's Congress consists of two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. The executive branch is usually referred to as the President. The executive branch consists of the President, the Cabinet, and many federal departments and agencies. The judicial branch is also called the courts. The courts consist of two levels of federal courts and the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the nation. So one part of the government does not become too powerful, the Founding Fathers gave each branch separate powers. This is called separation of powers. The Constitution also includes a system of checks and balances, which allows one part of the government to check another. For example, Congress can reject a treaty even though it was signed by the President, and the President can veto a bill for new legislation proposed by Congress. Another example is federal judges. The President appoints federal judges, but Congress must approve the candidate. Lastly, the Supreme Court can declare a law or executive action to be unconstitutional. In these ways, the separation of powers and the system of checks and balances work to limit the power of the government and to protect individual rights. The job of the judicial branch is to review laws, explain laws, resolve disputes or disagreements, and decide if a law goes against the Constitution. The original Constitution set up the judicial branch by creating the Supreme Court. However, as the United States expanded and matured, the judiciary also grew in size as Congress established courts beneath the Supreme Court. Today, the federal court system has three levels. At the bottom are 94 district courts. Every state and territory has at least one district court. Above the district courts are 11 courts of appeals that serve a specific district of the country. At the top is the U.S. Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the nation, and it alone resolves disputes between states and determines whether a law goes against the Constitution. As such, the Supreme Court is the court of last resort. Every year, about 6,000 petitions are made to the U.S. Supreme Court. Of those, only about 60 cases are chosen to be heard by the court. Two factors that help the court decide whether to hear a case are whether the issues raised are of national importance and if the lower federal courts are split in their decisions on the case. This is the end of Section 1. We will now practice the related civics questions. Question 1. What is the supreme law of the land? The Constitution. The Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Question 2. What does the Constitution do? Protects basic rights of Americans. The Constitution sets up the government, defines the government, and protects basic rights of Americans. Question 13. Name one branch or part of the government. The courts. One branch of the government is the courts. The three parts of the government are Congress, which is also called the legislative branch, the President, also known as the executive branch, and the courts, or the judicial branch. Question 14. What stops one branch of government from becoming too powerful? Checks and balances. The system of checks and balances and the separation of powers keep one branch of government from becoming too powerful. Question 37. What does the judicial branch do? Reviews laws. The judicial branch reviews laws, explains laws, resolves disputes or disagreements, and decides if a law goes against the Constitution. Question 38. What is the highest court in the United States? The Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is the highest court in the United States. The Judicial Branch, Section 2. We will now begin the second section of Lesson 9. There are 9 justices on the Supreme Court, 1 Chief Justice and 8 Associate Justices. With an odd number of justices like 9, cases can be decided by a 5-4 majority. Justices are appointed by the President, approved by Congress, and serve for life or until retirement. The Constitution gave Supreme Court justices lifetime appointments in the hopes of keeping them independent of political influences. The Chief Justice is the head of the federal judiciary and head of the Supreme Court. The Chief Justice sets the Supreme Court's agenda and leads the court when it is in session. He or she also administers the oath of office to all new presidents and oversees the Senate trial if a president is impeached. The current Chief Justice is John Roberts, Jr. If asked who the Chief Justice is, you may answer with the justice's full name or just the last name. A basic principle behind the U.S. Constitution is the rule of law. The rule of law means everyone must obey the law, even leaders and the government. With the Supreme Court at the top, all courts in the United States help preserve the idea that no one is above the law. Using the Constitution as its guide, the Supreme Court has played an important role in the evolution of American democracy and civil rights. Some of its most important decisions have helped define the powers of the 3 branches of government, to end segregation, and to protect the basic freedoms of all Americans. As the highest court in the land, decisions made by the Supreme Court are final and apply to everyone in the United States. However, since they affect all Americans, the Supreme Court's decisions can be very controversial. One controversial ruling is Texas versus Johnson. Gregory Johnson was arrested for burning a U.S. flag during the 1984 Republican Presidential Convention. At the time, 48 states had laws protecting the American flag. Johnson was sentenced to a year in prison and fined $2,000. He appealed his conviction, and in 1989 the Supreme Court voted 5-4 that the burning of an American flag is a form of free speech and therefore protected by the Constitution. A more recent ruling is from the Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission case of 2010. At the time, corporations and unions could not make direct contributions to political parties or federal candidates. There were also restrictions on when these organizations could pay for political advertisements. In the Citizens United case, the Supreme Court ruled that these restrictions were a violation of free speech. This is a controversial decision because many people believe corporate money is harmful to the democratic system. For example, in 2016, the presidential and congressional candidates spent $6.8 billion on their campaigns, and most of that money came from the richest Americans, corporations, and unions. This is the end of Section 2. We will now practice the related civics questions. Question 12. What is the rule of law? The rule of law means no one is above the law. The rule of law means everyone must follow the law, leaders must obey the law, the government must obey the law, and that no one is above the law. Question 39. How many justices are on the Supreme Court? 9. There are 9 justices on the Supreme Court. Question 40. Who is the Chief Justice of the United States now? Roberts. John Roberts Jr. is the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court now. If asked who the Chief Justice is, you may answer with the justice's full name or just the last name. This is the end of Lesson 9. Return to the main page to practice the civics questions and dictation from the lesson.